Well, it's 7 o'clock. Shall we call it to order?
Good. Let me do roll call.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Chair Zwingli,
Present here.
Vice Chair Silverford,
Here.
Diane Foster,
Here.
Sean Garland,
Here.
Dave McCart, Rich Miller,
Here.
Amy Miller-Juvet, absent, Chris West.
Here.
All right.
Approval of the minutes now. And here's Amy.
Oh, Amy is present.
So last month we did not have a meeting, which means that we are looking at the minutes from the meeting before that. So June, I was not present for June.
I was present, and it's been 2 months, but I did look over the minutes, and I move they be approved as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to business. I want to apologize to everyone that was here last month for canceling our meeting with such short notice. Fortunately, I did not realize that we did not have a quorum until 4:30 that afternoon. So we got the information out as quickly as we could, and if we did not get to you directly, my apologies if you showed up and saw the board. Hopefully we can avoid having that happen in the future. But now that we do have a quorum and we are here, we have received a resignation from Dave McCart. His family and business commitments are to the point that it was just too difficult for him to be here, so he did submit his resignation, so we now have 2 open positions on the board. We have gone through the interview process, and the chief and I and Linda Henderson held interviews, and we have made recommendations, or we have decided upon some recommendations that are going to be presented to the city council and the mayor for approval or alteration, whatever they choose to do. When is it going to be presented for consideration?
Well, I'll probably send an email tomorrow, so that process will start then. It goes to the mayor, and the mayor makes final approval, and then it goes to the council for final approval.
So would we maybe have our 2 new members seated by our next meeting, or no?
My goal is to have them appointed for the September meeting.
Okay.
Whether we meet that or not, I don't know, because I don't control every phase of it,
Right.
but that's what we'll work for.
Okay. Okay. Future agenda topics. Chief, I think this is your department. What would you, are there topics that you would like us to be looking at in the future? What is on our horizon?
Well, thank you, Chair, before I offer my list of suggestions and ideas, I would defer back to the board and see if there's any specific topics that the board is interested in exploring. Is there anything that, hey, I'd like us to talk about, how we move forward on this, or how we do that, or how, whatever the case may be. So, and if there isn't, that's fine. I can certainly prime the pump and get a discussion going about some stuff, but there may have been some thoughts.
I had a couple of questions or concerns. I had a citizen had asked me about foot patrols with the police, and I guess I don't know if this is more of a summer months issue, and because I'm also seeing on social media some feedback from citizens as well about parks, Snyder Park, kids out late. I don't know if that's something we can, if we as a board would address. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from citizens is some concerns about that, about things that are a little more off-street, issues. So just bringing that to your attention.
The budget's approved in the spring, right? Or the budget recommendation is put forward. Is there an opportunity for us to provide some input to you as you prepare your budget to go to Joe and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so the process for the staff actually starts right after the first of the year. And depending on kind of when what the schedule looks like, maybe even before then, but normally after the first of the year. So that's when I'll start putting things together. And certainly you all would have every opportunity to say, hey, Chief, we want you to think about this when you're putting your budget together. So yeah, you bet.
Do you have something in mind?
No, we're eyes and ears, like Sean just related, and I think because of that role, there may be some things that we can share with the chief and have some discussion as he prepares his staff budget. I just think that's an opportunity that we haven't really, we were doing the staffing study last time when all this stuff was going on. So just something that was flagged to me. The other issue, it's still a nagging thing to me, and I don't really know what the status is, but it's the drug problem in the Park Stella area in general, where we're at that. I still am concerned about that, but I just am never down there. And my kids don't go down there either, so, but that's just a gut feeling I have that it's still an issue.
I hear a lot of feedback and see a lot of feedback still about speeding through neighborhoods, and I know that we've talked about that a lot here, so I'm not sure if there's anything else to do or explore, but it might be worth it.
I have a question for you. Do you have any statistical information or data regarding any extra shenanigans since Pokemon Go? Because there's been a lot of activity down in the park and downtown.
Yeah, no, I don't.
There hasn't been, or no, you don't have any?
I don't have any information, either formal or anecdotal.
Okay.
Other than, obviously, I and other staff, as all of you have seen increased foot traffic, when that started, but I certainly don't have any stories or any information. And a far cry from data. So it's just.
The only other thing that I know is hanging out there is what's up with the police academy and the incident down in, was it Florida? With the police academy that they had.
Oh, the training accident?
Yeah, it sparked where we're at and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, so I am not aware of any conversations at the statewide level, and I have not been privy to any conversations more focused at the police academy.
No, I'm talking about our little thing that we were doing. Citizens Police.
Oh, the community academy.
Yeah.
It's really not an issue because that we would not. I haven't heard anything, and
I just wondered the status of where we were at on doing our thing. And I thought of it when I heard about that.
Okay, I totally misunderstood your question.
No, I didn't think we were going to have people doing.
Live.
Yeah.
So, thank you. It's in the budget, and so the portion that I budgeted for, and I can certainly, if need be, seek the assistance of the foundation if there was parts of it that weren't beyond the budgeted amount. So we're ready to go. The city has reset the Sherwood University, the city's academy, and so I'm kind of waiting to see how the response looks on that, because as you recall, they tried in the spring and there just wasn't any response. Certainly not enough to pull off the big machine that's going to be. And so I'm waiting to see kind of what that looks like, and assuming, there's really obviously two scenarios. Scenario one would be they get enough response and they pull that off. Then I need to coordinate around that, because I don't want to draw, I don't want to create competition. Scenario two is that they don't get enough response and they end up canceling it. then we charge ahead and set some dates. So under either scenario, we're really at the point where we need to set some dates. I need to get back together with Michael and talk about, you know, what he can do, what I want him to do, what he can't do, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, the place we're at now is where the rubber meets the road with resources, because I've got to figure out what it's really reasonable for a volunteer to be able to do. For example, he's not going to put lesson plans together. So my staff is going to have to do that. We're going to have to prepare the meat of those different presentations and blocks that we've created. There's a lot of things he can do. He can help facilitate the equipment and supplies, and, you know, help put binders together and those kinds of things. But in terms of actually creating getting the folks that are going to be presenting and getting that stuff together, our folks, you know, my staff's going to have to do that, and that's so. That initial onset investment is going to take a lot of resources. Once we have it in the can, so to speak, then it's, you know, the next one will be a little bit easier. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay.
I have every intention of doing it this fall. I can tell you that fall is a pretty busy time around here with the start of school and the change of seasons and the outdoor enthusiasts that we have in the building. And so it'll probably be a late fall. But we have a fair number of hunters, so at any given time there could be key people that are out dodging trees, chasing free woodland creatures. So, no, that's present. That's another on the record. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, as Chief Groth said about how fall is so busy and football games, that hopefully the city will decide if the Citizens Academy is going forward. But then I would recommend advertising this to start after the first of the year, just because it's so busy between now and Christmas, and that would give maybe the chief, and again, it's just a suggestion, time to put materials, resources, personnel in play, and really hoping that they'll have additional staff hired, and that they won't all be, the resources won't be as stretched as perhaps they are right now. And then it gives people time to plan to maybe enroll.
There's also a lot of unknowns.
Just a suggestion.
A lot of unknowns till November 8th on a lot of things going on in the city. It'd be nice to have that behind us. So we
Actually, Councilor Henderson mentioned football, and I not even thought about that. And our event is going to be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday event, which means Friday is going to be really stressed for anybody that wants to participate, because we're going to. The plan was, as it's sketched out now, is to go into the evening.
Not to mention youth football.
Yeah.
Grades 3 through 8.
So that's actually a pretty good suggestion. I really wanted to get it going. However, I mean, we've got to be realistic. So anyway, so there's your update.
That's
late fall, first of the year. That's kind of where we're looking at.
I had a thought. When we were down at Grand Ron for that program, and talking about community policing, we all had to come up with a topic for our community. And as I recall, we came up with traffic safety. And to my knowledge, I don't know that anything's been done on that any further than just that we talked about it down there. But just from my own personal observation, traffic safety is as bad, if not worse than ever around here. And so I just tossed that out as a topic that maybe we want to talk about and take it forward.
Yeah, and I actually have that written down because of Amy's note, and so yeah, absolutely, I think it's very appropriate. I can tell you that has been discussed, and the idea of some of what I will get into when I was after I give you guys a chance is kind of the approach regarding traffic safety, and there have been conversations about that. So just to tell you, Bob, that there has been some things that have happened, but we're not done yet. So let me get into that a little bit, but it's a very good point. Very good topic.
Any other thoughts? No? Well, so we have foot patrol, off-the-street issues, for instance, in the parks. Whether we have an opportunity for the board to provide input for the budget process, maybe listening to the community to see if they have anything to say. There was speeding through the neighborhoods, any statistics related to the advent of Pokemon Go, status on the community academy, and traffic safety. So of those things, I think that we can certainly be listening to the community for input as we approach the budget season. As far as the rest of it goes, though, do you have something in mind for us?
Yeah. So I think we have a staff report. I think I'll kind of mash everything together. So just so you know, Chair, we're going to get the staff report. I probably won't have anything left. But my suggestion is that it might be time, now that we've gotten kind of past the volume of work that this board has been asked to do with regard to marijuana and kind of that issue, I think it might be time to start talking about the public policy that I've referenced and have discussions about what that looks like, what I mean when I refer to that, and start letting you develop kind of the framework of a public policy for policing for the community that we can then take the next step with at some point. So as a part of that, that's really the overarching topic, but certainly as a part of that, we would talk about developing then a strategic plan. So if you talk about the public policy being kind of the foundational document, if you were, the next level, deeper into the weeds would be a strategic plan, which is something that we would update, potentially annually or potentially every other year. And then when you go deeper into the strategic plan is where you would get something like a traffic safety plan. And so what I have floated that I promised that I would touch base on more is that the idea that the police department would take the lead for the community in the traffic safety plan, and it would really be a community plan as we discussed and were able to model through that training using the community policing format. So we've met, key leaders within staff have met and discussed that. It's really something that kind of gets into the world of policy. And so there's several things that would be contained potentially in a traffic safety plan, like how do we deal with requests for additional signage, additional crosswalks, additional traffic calming devices. Those are policy issues. In terms of do we want to have do we want to spend money on those things? How is the city going to address that? So that really becomes a council policy issue. So at some point we hope to get some direction from the council on where we want to go on that, because obviously we can't build something and then have council say, wait a minute, that's not the direction we want to go. So at that highest level, we need to get some input and get that council. And then what I hope to do is develop a group, a community group that would involve key staff members, not only from the police department, but from the engineering department, and community members that can get together and talk about what are our priorities. Now, this is going to be a big group. It could include some or all of this board. It could involve lots of other citizens, but it's going to be a big group so that we make sure we cover the realm of and get as much input as we can. And it would involve topics like pedestrian safety, like neighborhood speeding. How do we deal with that? Is what we're doing now adequate? And if it's not, how would you like us to better address that? What are some ideas? And what are the priorities of the community? Should we be spending money to increase and enhance pedestrian safety? And if so, does that mean we get more flashing stop signs? Does it mean we put in more crosswalks? Does it mean we put flashing amber lights with a push button at certain crosswalks? Does it mean we put lighting? You know what I mean? And so there's so many moving parts to this, but we have that group together that can identify that. And at the conclusion, I would see, and the goal would be that there would be a finished product, a plan that would have city staff input, citizen input, community input, that could then be put together and formalized with the blessing from policymakers that says, this is the direction we want to go. And we can then build budgets that would be based on that. Okay, Public Works, your budget needs to be able to handle the addition of, X number of crosswalks or signage this coming budget year. Police Department, you need to look into additional ways to enforce stop sign adherence, right? So, throughout the process, we pull data, which I can already do some of that. And I will tell this board, there's no secret that we've already done some survey work on several stop signs in the city with our floater red light vendor red flags. So they actually threw some cameras up for us. Some people noticed them, and what were those? And so we put some stuff out on social media just to let everybody know. But we've done some informal surveying to see how are people responding to our stop signs. And I've got a thumb drive that's got a bunch of videos on it. And at some point in this process, I can tell people, hey, this is what we're seeing. They can talk about what they're seeing. And I can tell you that there's a problem. There's a definite problem with people not stopping at stop signs. How do we deal with that? So that's what we need to have this group tell us. As opposed to making a decision in a vacuum, and maybe that decision is, I don't have the resources to do anything beyond what I'm doing now. And if we address that, then just understand that means we're not going to be in the neighborhood watching for speeders. And talking about that, how do we do that? How do we try to address that problem? So I'm, there's bits of minutia there, but the point is bringing a group together to accomplish this. So that would be one potential level, within that framework. Another potential level could be community engagement. What does that look like? Is that something that is important to this board in terms of public policy, right? Community policing and the application of community policing. Those are things that can be contained in that public policy that would then roll out in the strategic plan. So that we plan, okay, how are we going to do this? We know that we're going to need to set goals and priorities based on the policy for us to implement in that strategic plan. So hopefully I'm making sense as how we layer down and get deeper into the onion, but some of you may be familiar with the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. Well, they have published their report, and I was fortunate enough to attend a briefing in Washington, D.C. I was invited, talked to Joe. He said, I think it's a good idea. So I made a rather quick turnaround trip to D.C. and attended a briefing at the White House on 21st century policing. I can tell you that is a big deal nationally. It's a big deal for our country's leadership. Now, we know there's going to be a change of some kind in November. So the looming question, I guess the elephant in the room, is where does that go on November 9th? Or excuse me, January 20th, I guess it would be. And we don't know, but the point is that it's finding a very critical footprint in the country, and we're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to deal with it on a regional, a statewide. We're going to have to deal with it locally. What does that report mean to Sherwood? And at some point, I can give you probably maybe in our next meeting, I can go over and give you a brief overview of the report. But there's 6 pillars that are their key pillars of the report, and then there's 59 total recommendations, 38 of which deal with local policing efforts. The rest of them deal with more federal and national level types of programmatic things. But 38 of them deal with local policing efforts. So 2 of the 6 pillars, which they made very clear were the 2 most important, they didn't put the pillars in any kind of rank order, but they took 2 of them and put them on both ends. If you look at them in the graphic, they're actually, they've used a graphic of a pillar, concrete pillar. And the 2 that they put on both ends, they described as really the bookends, the 2 critical pillars that everything else revolves around and everything else peels off of. And those 2 pillars are legitimacy and trust. Police legitimacy and trust. And then on the other end, the pillar is officer wellness and safety. So those are the two that they're really stressing. Everything that happens has to be contained within the framework of police have to be legitimate, and they have to maintain a level of trust within the public, and we have to take care of our police officers. So again, I can tell you that it's a big deal, and we need to address it. And I'm thinking now, how can we address this locally? How are we doing on those 38 recommendations? Some of them, I don't have them in front of me, but some of them I can tell you we're doing quite well. Others, we probably need to explore and look at what we can enhance. Community engagement is a big part of that report. That is, those two words show up in that report an awful lot, because through community engagement is how you show legitimacy and you build trust by building relationships. So what does that look like for us? That's something for this board to weigh and would be contained as a part of that policy. So there's lots that can be contained in that, but when you start getting down so deep, when you start talking about specific activities, then obviously you have to go backward. When you're talking about foot patrol on the trails, parks, spending more time dealing with the drug issues and the behavioral issues in the park, that peels backward into the strategic plan. What is our goal? Our goal and our outcome or our measure is going to be how are we directing resources into those things. And again, that it all peels out of this public policy. So I think the topics you're talking about, I think we can start to address, starting on a grand scale. What do we want policing to look like for Sherwood, for our community? What's important to us? What matters? And then it's used, the word policy is in there on purpose, because at some point then, our policy makers, the council has to say, yeah, this is what we want our policy to be. This is what policing needs to be for us. And there are, of course, is an ongoing conversation about different ways to approach policing on the financial end of things. There's a work session scheduled on September 6th, I believe, to talk about the proposals that we've received from Washington County Sheriff's Office regarding those 5 hours of policing time in the middle of the night from 1 in the morning until 6 in the morning. So that work session will take place in September. And the policymakers will have the opportunity to hear and see those proposals, talk about what does it mean, what's that going to look like, when those different proposals played out, what do they cost, so on and so forth. And certainly that has an impact on where we go, but I think, again, this board can start work on that. And I think everything that has been brought up as in terms of a very detailed, specific activity or concern, plays into some of this. So it's a big topic. There's a lot to it, but I think it's really fits. It really addresses 100% of the purpose and the goal of what this board needs to do. Of course, it's not just the 7 and eventual 9 of you that will be dealing with that, but it's, again, your arms into the community saying, okay, we're working on this. We need you to come to meetings, or we need you to give me your input about what matters, and then we plug that into the policy. So, and obviously I will help guide you with that. There's examples of public policies out there that we can look at and build a framework from. So, and the Community Academy certainly fits right into that as a part of community engagement, community education, whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of my answer and response and suggestion and specific to this topic of what does tomorrow hold for this board. And that's all contingent upon somebody not asking for your help in some other huge topic, right? So marijuana was the last one. I certainly don't foresee any other one on the horizon. So And then the last thing I'll add, since I'm taking my staff report time as well, Chair, is I'm sure all of you have seen the video. We had just an amazing water fight on Monday with about 12 to 15 kids at Cannery Square. That was, the idea was born by a community member, and she brought it to me, and I said, well, let's make sure we, you know, I've always got to wear my risk and hat, but fleshed out a couple of the concerns, and it was a great idea. We had a lot of fun, and the kids loved it, and we got hammered. So we were out-equipped, outworked, and out-squirted. So we all came back pretty wet. But anyway, it's my goal, and I stress, you know, I'm glad John came in, one member of our leadership team. I stress them because I'm the idea fairy. I come up with, hey, we can do this, and then they struggle to implement it with, you know, I come up with a $15 idea, and they say, okay, Chief, how are we going to do this for the $5 we have? Just to use an analogy. That happens quite a bit, and so I work on ways, and we work together on ways that we can find to engage our community. And I've got lots of things boiling in my head. It's just a matter of what we can pull off. So there's programs out there we can adopt. There's new ways, you know, new ideas that we can come up with. But it's a matter of getting people there to do it, and not just the chief, the captain, and a sergeant, because that's not who people want to necessarily meet, and that's not who they should meet. They need to be interacting with their police officers, the folks that are going to, potentially they're going to see on a traffic stop, or that's going to show up when they call dispatch and say, hey, I need help, or whatever the case may be. Those are the ones we want them to meet. So with respect to that, yeah, when we get some people hired, that will certainly help, especially once we get them trained. But until they get them trained, then they don't offer a whole lot of help. They're just another person in the car.
So that begs the question, how are we doing with the hiring process?
We're doing well. We have 2 people that we have in the final phases now that we're trying to get through. So we're going to focus on those 2. We have 3 open positions. One which came from the last budget that we just have not been able to fill because we can't get a qualified applicant through. And then the 2 resignations that we've had. So we are down 3 positions, which an agency of 26, that's huge. I mean, that's over 10%. That is a massive hit. So we're working on that. We have 2 people that work. So we're going to focus on those 2, and then we'll regroup and see where we're at with that. Get going on that next one. And so there's so much going on with respect to the work session I talked about too. Everything has to kind of work together, because depending on what decisions are made with regard to those 5 hours, that could change dramatically what our operational footprint looks like and scheduling footprint looks like. And there could be some other decisions that are made relative to staff and positions based on that. So that's why we're moving forward on those 2, and then we'll go from there. So
to that end, are we going to be asked to provide any input on that process?
Well, I've told you when the work session is, and I would certainly remind you that you have every right to be there. And beyond that, I will let Councilor Henderson, she's certainly aware of that, and if she wants to weigh in on that or not. But so obviously we can, staff and your council liaison can pass that message on and then go from there.
And you said that was September 6th?
Yes.
And what time?
That work session is actually going to take place after the regular meeting. So I'd have to look up the agenda. I don't think it's a huge agenda. So the regular meeting starts at 7, anywhere from 8, 9 o'clock. When regular business is done, they'll go, because they have several work session items that night. So they're going to do I think there might even be an exec session, then they'll do a work session, then they'll go to regular business, and then they'll convene back in a work session for the staffing proposals. So I can't give you a time, unfortunately, but it'll happen that evening.
Chief, can you remind me, who is the second resignation? I know of.
Well, which one do you know of? Tim Taft was a police officer. We hired a lateral police officer from Cedar Rapids. He was with us just about exactly 1 year when, for, I don't know the specific, just made a decision that just wasn't working and went back to his home agency. So that's unfortunately the risk you run with a lateral, especially one that has made a significant move. I mean, if we hired somebody from Beaverton, that's less apt to happen, perhaps, but somebody that relocates like that, that's just a risky one. So, thank you.
So you had offered to tell us more next month about the president's report?
Yes.
I'd like to add that to the agenda.
Okay. We'll do that. I will prepare a presentation. It's a good report.
Anyone else have any questions for the chief?
The strategic plan that you talked about, does that fit underneath the strategic plan that you have for the police department? Or how does it complement? What does it do? Is it?
No, that would be the strategic plan for the police department. And if you go back and look in the purpose section under the police advisory board, the strategic plan, I believe, is mentioned specifically that this board would help me or whoever the chief is set that strategic plan based on, hopefully, I would hope based on a public policy document, but if not, based on the input from the community about what matters and what's important. Because for those of you that are, many of you, I'm sure not all of you, are very familiar with strategic plans. There's probably 100,000 different versions and varieties and what they look like, but lots of different ways to build them. But in essence, they set a roadmap for where an organization is going for a set period of time, whether that be 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, or whatever the case may be. The problem, of course, with strategic plans is that they are often put together and everybody says, what a great bunch of work, and then they stick them up on a shelf. And so I have been, and we have been, strategic planning within this department, and I'm not afraid to say that, as far as I know, we're the only department in the city that has been strategic planning. It's the city manager's goal to have a city strategic plan, and other departments now, I know the library, Adrian is very excited about developing a strategic plan for the library, but that's just a shameless pat on the back. But so I'm excited to have this board help with the input and develop that roadmap for us and establish some priorities and service priorities and some goals and some outcomes that we can say, hey, how do we do on this? So that's, I'm talking about just for the police department. Because we're running off one that's going on 18 months now. So it needs to be updated. I purposely have left it alone so that we could do it but in cooperation with your guys' input. So.
Any other questions? No? Councilor Newman?
I can. Councilor Henderson just mentioned National Night Out. I'm trying to think. About half of you, this group was there. It was clearly, without a doubt, the most successful one we've had, and it was our third, right? Third? Yeah. Which is really good. I mean, it's not like, yeah, we've been doing it for 15 years and this was the best. But the point is, it just gets bigger every year, and there was just a massive crowd. The only thing that was frustrating this year was that we got there to set up and there was a pickup truck parked in violation of the no parking sign that we had to deal with. And we couldn't set the trailer up because that's where the truck was. And everything feeds off the trailer, the way we have it done. So we ended up being 30 minutes behind schedule, and unfortunately there were several people that had arrived intentionally for the start at 5 o'clock that there was no hot dogs ready, there was no snow cones ready, and we were scrambling, getting everything set up. And I felt bad for them, but it was a tremendous event, and we don't count. There's no gate. There's really no way to count. But Captain Daniel at one point stopped and just kind of did a head count. He said that he easily counted 300 people. My guess would be that we probably had, by night's end, over 500 people in attendance, which is just absolutely amazing. We had just under 500 hot dogs, and we went through all but about 2 or 3, maybe
I think she said
10.
something like that.
They completely demolished every bit of snow cone material we had. They were a huge hit. Big kudos on camera, on minutes to Rachel and Rachel's kid, I'm sorry, Miles? That's her husband. Rachel and Miles and Rachel's Kitchen, Fat Milo's, and their team, a lot of help. Big shout out to the Police Foundation that financially supported and made National Night Out happen. So hugely successful in that. We had lots of partners there, and lots of people. So thank you to board member Rich Miller, who volunteered to do a stint in the gruff costume, which is never easy, as Sergeant Shields can attest to. Yeah, it was hugely successful. So, was there something else you were getting ready or something? Okay.
Counselor News.
I just wanted to note, I did look up the agenda, and I see the sheriff proposal as a before council.
That hasn't been updated. I will confirm, but last I knew it was going to be at the end. So,
Okay.
in fact, I'm going to try to confirm right now as you move on. So,
It's not very busy. It's the same night that we would adopt the proposed regulations on recreational marijuana as well, because we've already had our first reading, so. I don't really have anything of significance. He already covered National Night Out and the, I prefer to call it the water play date, but since it was supposed to be spontaneous, maybe that's not the best way to label it. The Chair Zwingli and I and the Chief interviewed candidates to replace the 2 vacancies that we have, and it's interesting all the things that, the list of future agenda items, and then all the things that the Chief talked about that would be part of, a strategic plan. It was very obvious to the 3 of us, and correct me if I'm wrong, that community policing is like saying, I made a Xerox copy. It's a label that means something very different to very different people. Some people think that, community policing is boots on the ground. Some people think it's a water play date, and it was just really obvious that it means something different to every single person. And the thing I like about having, obviously, a strategic plan, which is kind of in line with what we have like in public works, is it's a plan in place that says this year we're going to do this many crosswalks, or we're going to do a study, and instead of being reactive, we're being proactive, which means we're more in control of cost, because we're able to plan whether or not we can afford to spend more money on public safety. I don't know, depending upon what the future brings. But it certainly would be the best financial way to deal with issues, instead of just waiting for them to happen and then having us react. I guess that's it. I don't really have any other report. We've only met a couple times. We only met one in July and once in August, but we do have the recreational marijuana on the agenda, which will be another public hearing. And then, the ballot this November is going to be just huge. It's going to be probably the biggest ballot I've ever seen as far as local issues, really. 5 amendments to the charter, 4 positions on council, the school bond measure, and it's just going to be a huge agenda in addition to, obviously, a presidential election. So I'm just hoping we have good voter turnout. So.
Any questions for council?
Well, I just have one point. I think, Linda, maybe you can back me up on that since you've been in these meetings and obviously the council meetings. I know we as a board really didn't get a chance to make a formal recommendation on to the planning commission. With recreational, I think, we were planning on doing that in July, but a meeting canceled. But the planning commission, I don't think really they did anything too much on top of what we had really been discussing as a board. I think they seemed to say they kind of pushed everything to council fairly close to the state regulations. So.
Yes. I mean, I had some questions on Tuesday night about, can you double up? Can you be dispensary and a lab, or can you be a lab and a producer? And basically, they said yes. And so depending upon how we draft our ordinances, it may affect, whether or not somebody chooses to or not to, and that was not something that we ever really talked about. Was, we looked at buffers. If you go to the council packet, you'll see some maps that Michelle Miller, and I think she had similar buffers, but the map is,
We couldn't see it when we had the presentation,
right.
And that to me.
Right, so you see the medicinal dispensary. I'm not really sure whether it's an oval. Why is it a circle? I don't understand. It might be something with how the property is laid out. I don't know.
That's what it looks like from the map. The property is long and skinny, and
right.
they did it based on that.
Right. But I thought it was, just a dot, and then you go, straight out. But that's how the noise ordinance works. Yeah, I don't think that they added anything of significance, mostly because staff has been working on this for more than a year. So.
And I'm attending the planning commission meetings too. Just
right.
Report back to everybody else here is that they were very appreciative of the work that we had done, preparing for that as well. So pass that on.
I mean, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And, there are other communities that have done far greater. Tualatin has a 3,000 foot buffer. So, we're pretty much in the middle as far as doing something versus doing nothing. And then other communities like Wilsonville have enacted an entire ban, which I'm sure will be on their ballot in November. I think we've done the best work we can given the information and the timelines that we have.
So my one concern from the June meeting, because it didn't have clear what the map was, the whole thing about the light industrial, but and with the new shopping center being in light industrial, that was a flag to me. And looking at this map, it's off because of the two buffers, the park
right.
buffer and the
residential
medical.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing that I was going to raise in July that I was still concerned about because I didn't have an answer because of that shopping center being light industrial and the way they had charted out what could go in light industrial. But the buffers take care of that.
Yeah. And if you have any concerns, you're certainly welcome to come, and there'll be another public testimony. We didn't take any public testimony Tuesday night. We received one email from a couple that said they didn't think Sherwood needed a recreational marijuana dispensary in our town. That was it. So I think a lot of people are still trying to understand, what it means for Sherwood. And
that ballot is going to be a mess with the
it's
5 different,
huge.
For the retail marijuana, it's 5 different types, and then the vote to extend the ban, then also a vote to enact the tax on top of that contingent on the first.
Right. Yeah, good point. I didn't even bring those up, that, that there are separate ballot titles for recreational marijuana on the ballot. So, because if they don't ban it, we don't want to miss the opportunity to tax it.
Right.
Even though my opinion, and of course Chief cannot weigh in on this as a public employee, but what would be the social cost to our community if we have a recreational dispensary in town? And the financial cost is completely uncertain. Nobody knows what tax revenues would come in if we have a recreational dispensary in town versus the cost of servicing the dispensary or patrolling the dispensary, or, I had talked to store manager at Walmart, because they're partnering with the Chamber Golf Tournament, which is next Friday, and he said that he has had, even though the recession is technically over and the economy's doing better, he's had over $200,000 in theft. People literally just walk into the store, put a TV in their cart and walk out. Or he had a theft a couple weeks ago, or at some point where they grabbed computers and they went out the back door, which is an emergency exit, threw them in a truck and drove off, and they had taken the license plate off or somehow covered it up. And, you know, that's in a Walmart. So I can't answer those questions. I just know how I feel personally and what I've read about sort of nationally, that that I think people need to do their own research and vote accordingly in November.
I think one of the citizens spoke also at the last meeting, maybe, about seeing if the city was interested in the idea of some town hall meetings. I seem to recall in the 2014 election, didn't we have somebody from like the League of Women Voters came in and went over some of the ballot measures and spoke to that and had some citizens?
Yeah, they did that, but they didn't do it at City Hall. I think they did it at...
something at City Hall, I
They
believe.
did. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
From the League of Women Voters.
Oh, it was an open house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but it wasn't part of a council meeting.
No, exactly. Yeah, it was just an open house, and I don't know
Yeah.
how that's associated with the city, if the city plans that, or. But I thought that was a good idea, and that might be something even to, you know, some people on the board here that might still have some input. You know, that's maybe a good time to talk that through.
You know, it would be a great event if we could get somebody from every aspect of what's going to be on the ballot to come and talk. Pros, cons, or at least provide information. It doesn't mean they have to necessarily give an opinion or weigh in, but to coordinate that would be, you know, pretty difficult. But people need to know, you know, how to vote before they get their ballot, and you know, it's Monday night or Tuesday afternoon, and then they need to vote and drop it off. So
Well, and the city.
outside of social media,
Well,
because of course everything on Facebook is accurate, right?
yes. So with the stuff that the city has on with regards to this, there's just going to be the statements in the voter pamphlet. And there's not likely going to be people that are going to spend the $350 to do extra voter pamphlet statements.
Oh, I disagree.
You think so?
I mean, how many people, if you read the local newspapers, they're saying that this is just a cash crop for Oregon. And I was under the impression that they were going to wait a year and put it on the ballot in 2017, but clearly they didn't. I mean, 16 during the presidential election, but they did it last year. So there's a lot of money out there that they'll spend. It won't necessarily be local people, but there's all kinds of PACs, political action committees, pro-marijuana, that could easily submit a statement for $350 into the voters pamphlet in favor of. But I have no idea if they're going to do that or not. You know, that's
Do you know offhand what the other cities have a similar ballot measure coming up in November? Who else is voting on something like this?
Newburgh, North Plains, Wilsonville, us.
But the rest of Washington County, they didn't enact a moratorium, right? Like Dalton, Tiger, King City.
No, well, Tigard obviously did because they have 5. Off the top of my head, I don't know. So, but the date is passed if they haven't done that, at least for the November ballot. So,
Any other questions for council? Citizen comment? Nancy?
John? John
I
was
have
there.
something I'd like to say. It doesn't need to be on camera.
Well, it's gonna.
Then I'll say it later. No. It was actually a compliment. The last meeting, was canceled because there weren't enough people. It happened to coincide with an article in the paper, and there were, on the comments, the police department is having an open meeting tonight. Let's all show up and tell the chief what we think. And Mr. Forward-looking there saw that and put no conspiracy here. Because then they said it, they showed up and it was canceled, and there was a sign like it was, that was why, you know, it was canceled. He said it was just simply there wasn't a quorum. But who knows, you know, what might have occurred, but I thought that was bright of him to, just because he just calmly said no conspiracy here, we just had to cancel because we didn't have enough people. So, kudos to Sean.
Any other concerns, comments? We are adjourned.
All right.